I shared that in my little point, yeah. But quite often in insurance, not so much the governments are unwilling, it's just that they don't have the policies and regulations they can implement it. So that's not
So the data just getting
yeah. So my experience in Malaysia usually is that they know what they need to do, they know what they want to do, but all the different agencies don't have an idea of how to do it. That should lead okay because the other presenters are talking about their best practices.
yes. Are you?
Please meet. Sorry, no, just wanting your emails.
That's okay.
Presentations either.
No.
Speaking at it is better.
Yes. I'll do a couple of slides of I'm so excellent. Yes, that's even better. And so we've got a very urgent slot. I hope people have woken up enough yesterday.
Because I stopped that Monday we had a meeting.
Yes.
We mostly work on these neighbors. Yeah, I mean, we provide some tools, and then other people need to we don't know anything about the energy industry or environmental health or any of those things.
It's okay. They
Okay.
have their microphone. That's why it's so to speak.
Yeah. Later tonight. Choose a seat.
Expert. You will ask me stuff, so I will prefer.
By the way, your color is right. Also the other side. So, did Lorena tell you that you will be able to
I just overheard some of your things, and it seems similar to, for me, like in Malaysia, for example, some of the things that we use is for aquaculture, where we would have the salinity and
We're using it a lot in the aquaculture implementations. We would love to talk about better process to coffee growing.
Yeah. In Malaysia, it was agriculture, so Thomas is here.
No, but it's good. As I'm a regulator, my perspective is totally different. It's policy making and how to enable the engineer thing and all things. You're developing applications.
I'm trying to get them to open the data on the government side.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
So it's not open yet?
It's not open yet, not because of they don't want to, it's because they don't have policies and regulations for them to. That's actually
very good.
The other issue as a regulator that we try to
How many are we?
one problem that we're facing now is that the private sector are starting to should be made public. So,
You mean that's like data sovereignty?
Yeah. So when
The executive director. So you work, you're a professor. Good. Okay, that's beautiful.
I'm majoring the IoT or the network, like SDN or CDN.
That's beautiful. It would be lovely to hear about your work. Thank you so much.
big problem for mapping in Malaysia, where 3 or 4 different private, both public and private sector agencies all had different information on geographic information. So therefore, each one of them, it became an arms race of who has the most geographical data rather than actually sharing.
A competition lawyer will tell you, oh, no, that's better. Because if they share information, they will be in some sort of antitrust violations. But sharing information is very good to improve efficiencies of certain businesses.
So one thing I wanted to highlight was that Google, for example, was already ready to have the navigation, but because they had to deal with 5 to 7 players to get the legal agreements just to get the data ready, so it was a purely legal problem and not a technical problem. How do you solve those kind of issues?
Well, that's what we're doing. We're trying to start not developing regulations, but policies that give them certainty that they are not incurring into antitrust risks, which sometimes there are. And the second one is seeing them on the table. Okay. That's what we do. We just try to promote collaboration. What we call it co-competition. So to collaborate, compete. And that's the way. But we're in a very early stage. So we're still a very early stage. So.
But it's moving very fast.
Yeah, it's going very fast.
Yes, good morning. It's 9 o'clock. It is really early for many of us, I think. So we will probably have a lot of people walking in during the session, at least I hope so, if they can actually find the room, which all of you did, which is not bad. I hope we're getting some remote participation. I'm guessing it will probably be from Asia, because at least they are well awake in the day. Europe, it's still 8 o'clock, and well, you shouldn't threaten people before their first cup of coffee. So, and the US, well, if they are still awake, they've probably been to a party, so how much they can add to the debate, we will see. Anyways, this event focuses on policies and practices to enable the Internet of Things, which I think is the, by the way, could we have the slides up of the first presentation, please? Yes. So it will be the next big thing, and at the OECD, we have been working on the Internet of Things now for a couple of years, and we see several areas where governments can play a role to enable the Internet of Things, not necessarily first to regulate it, but just to make it possible. We did a couple of quick calculations just to see whether those predictions of 25 billion devices by 2025 or 2030 would be realistic. So our quick calculation showed that an average family with 2 teenagers in the OECD in 2012 had 10 internet-connected devices already. That would likely be 25 in 2017 and 50 by 2022. And when you take those numbers and you extrapolate over the OECD and you allow that basically everybody who doesn't have broadband doesn't have any Internet of Things yet, you still end up with 1.7 billion devices today, and in 10 years from now, we would be at about 14 billion devices just in the homes in the OECD. Now, it's a guess. We don't know what the future will hold, but all of a sudden that idea of 25 or 40 billion connected devices by 2025 from Ericsson doesn't seem so bad. And it's really more than you think, because this is a new tram in The Hague, and you see an IP address up front, unfortunately not IPv6, but on all the displays on the side it has a different IP address. So each device is connected, and you don't know how many there are in the tram themselves. There's a number of building blocks, and in the end it will lead to autonomous machines. We will combine cloud, big data, M2M. I kind of whited out remote control, but I think that that will be one of the areas that we will see development in as well, where we will see more and more remote control. And then we will see many autonomous machines, and they will change the way we work and live. And the traffic light, I think, is a nice example. London, since a short time now, has self-learning autonomous traffic lights that coordinate, that are coordinated in groups and act as a whole cluster, and that learn based on the traffic experiences of previous days. So all of a sudden your city becomes part of this autonomous system, which guides traffic flows through the city based on availability. Now, one thing that we at the OECD think is essential is that access to numbering resources is improved, and particularly that large-scale users of the Internet of Things, of GSM technology. So, for example, car companies, that you take Toyota and Volkswagen, they produce 10 million vehicles per year. So they roughly will have 150 million vehicles on the road, all carrying SIM cards. Now imagine these guys having to change mobile operators. Anybody want to change 150 million SIM cards? It just will not happen. But we can do this if governments change regulations so that car companies could hold their own SIM cards. When we proposed this, we were contacted by several car manufacturers around the world, Fortune 500 companies, etc. The Dutch government has now liberalized its regulations. The German government is looking into this. The German car manufacturer think that they can save about €1 per vehicle per month. So for the German car industry, this would be a €2 billion jackpot that they could use to better enable the Internet of Things. It will not just lead to bigger profits for them, but it will make them buy more data, it will make them do more things. Now, there are a number of challenges that will be addressed by our speakers today, and I will leave the challenges on here for a while so that you can have a look at them. I will now introduce our speakers. We've asked our speakers to come up with recommendations for governments, because if there are governments present here and we need to enable things, then it's best if we get told what we should do. So we have an excellent lineup here. We start off with Jari Arko, current head of the IETF. We will then move on to Pablo Marquez, the head of the Colombian regulator. After that, Mr. Paolo Contini of Telecom Italia, who is the CEO of the unit that works on new innovation. Professor Lee, who was described to me when I met him by one of our Korean colleagues as the father of the Korean Internet of Things. So that's a very nice title to have, I think. And then in the end, Khairul, who this week won a Seed Alliance Award for his work on public sector information and the Internet of Things in Malaysia to make the Malaysian government more transparent and open. And I think we can learn from him greatly. So I would ask Jari to now start. Later on, the floor will be open for your questions, and we will move on. Thank you.
Thank you. thank you for having me on this panel. The Internet of Things topic is dear to me. I've been working on it for a number of years, and sort of both research and personal perspective, and love an opportunity to speak about it. So, first of all, this is obviously an incredibly useful development for many, many reasons. We really do want to see this happen, and it is happening. Just to mention environmental and energy conservation benefits that we can bring with this technology. But there are obviously also some challenges. And some of the challenges are technical. That is what we in the standard space and vendors, for instance, keep working on. One example of those challenges is power. You want to have devices that are able to operate for a long time on battery power, for instance, and small devices, so that's technically quite challenging. We've struggled with that, actually, but are making progress. There's also many commercial challenges. For instance, those of us who work on various kinds of internet access businesses or providing internet access have been converting our systems that have been mainly designed for humans to use in various different ways, to sort of human scale that will sell one entity to one human, and also that there's various user interface that people have to use. Trying to make that work for devices when we're talking about millions, or a single customer of this technology, like a car manufacturer might actually buy millions of devices, that's actually a bit of a challenge. We've also had a challenge with the ecosystem, the business ecosystem in this space. I think have gotten over that by now, but it is important that we don't have just like point solutions where we have this great technology from one company, but we have devices, we have networks, we have consulting services, we have the applications, sort of the whole system rather than individual things. And now we are starting to be there. But there may also be some challenges that relate to internet governance, or at least challenges where we who work on internet governance topics would like to be informed about those challenges and making sure that those are actually being addressed. And many of these things are such that they should be worked together by multiple stakeholders, obviously the standardization technical communities, the vendors, and the internet governance experts and regulators. So the first item that I wanted to bring up as a challenge is ensuring sufficient address and identifier spaces. And this is basically to not artificially constrain the growth of this market or growth of these applications. The numbers are big. We're talking about at least tens of billions in the next couple of years, or even beyond that. Like the current scenarios that I'm talking with at my day job at Ericsson are in the order of $500 billion or even more. So eventually we'll get to very, very large numbers. And it is essential there is enough growth potential in these technologies. For instance, large-scale deployments of IoT devices would probably benefit greatly from IPv6. You can address larger number of devices, and you don't have to go through NATs and possibly do the keep alive that the technology requires for going through NATs, which would say power and battery powered devices. The other thing that I want to mention is standards. And we have some progress there, but also some work remains. Standards usually enable the creation of competitive markets and provide customer choice. Many of yesterday's smart building or industry applications, for instance, were based on non-IP technology, which was sort of for a particular purpose and very difficult to reuse networks for other purposes. With IP, it is much easier to use the same network for multiple purposes, or use the same data for multiple applications. It really enables innovations and competition, and you can buy the same low price gear for even advanced applications, because everything is supported by the same network. But even on IP-based designs, it is important to ensure that there's modularity, that you can choose different components. Typically, these systems consist of devices and some network, perhaps cloud-based systems. As an example, a sensor that sends information somewhere, I would like to be able to change where it sends the information, that it goes to my cloud or that other cloud instead of the one that was initially set there. It has many benefits. The third challenge is privacy and security. That's kind of an obvious thing. One small example of where this is important is related to the previous example. So if I can change where my data goes, then I'm a little bit more in control of my data and can ensure that I put it in place that is safe. That would be a good thing. A fourth one is kind of something that I came up during this week, because we were discussing quite a lot about in this conference about how do we engage the developing nations and make sure that everyone, every person around the world has access to internet. That's a very, very important aspect, but it doesn't really stop there. I think it would be really, really important to think about also how do we deploy these other things, the Internet of Things technology in the developing nations. It's not just for the humans. I can see a lot of benefits for, say, environmental technology or environmental applications or agricultural applications. And I think we need to consider that and not just talk about the 7 billion people that we're trying to reach, because we need to go further. So I have a recommendation, which first of all is I mean, it's not a specific thing about a specific aspect of the technology or governance. It's just that when we talk about internet governance in general, we should not focus on how the internet is today and how do we use it. I mean, we do a little bit of browsing and we want other people to be able to do that as well. Think about the future. It's about the future application that we can actually most easily affect today. And we have to take, for instance, developing nations and Internet of Things technology into account. So let's try to do that. And I also want to say that while I want to bring these things up in an internet governance context, it doesn't mean that I'm necessarily calling for lots of regulation in this space from governments. They already have quite a lot of regulation that is just applicable in this area as well. But I think it's useful for all of us to understand some of these challenges and what they mean, and together I think we can form a consensus that okay, we really need to make sure that we have ability of those car companies, as Rudolf mentioned, to deploy those millions of devices, or that we have the numbering spaces that are needed to address the large number of devices needed. So with that, thank you.
Thank you, Jari. That was nicely on time too. Pablo, the floor is yours.
Okay. Good morning to everyone. Thank you very much, Rudolf, for the invitation to be part of this workshop. So basically, my main point in this presentation, which will be very short, is we must not forget as well, and as our previous panelist just said, that at the end, the Internet of Things is also about people. And when I say that is basically because when we're as policymakers and regulators, we want to enable the use of the Internet of Things in a way that improves the consumers and people's welfare, and not just, as some of the critics mentioned, the productiveness or the efficiencies of certain businesses. So in Colombia, we're currently working, and I don't know if we can. Is there a chance, a way I can? Sorry. Thank you. So we are currently seeing several phenomena. So the first is, how are we using or what's the regular use that we are looking at the market? So first, public transportation is being transformed by machine-to-machine communications. So the bus that you see in the right top corner is the Transmilenio, which is the public transportation system that currently works in Bogota, and it has been connected to truncated networks to the center of Transmilenio, and it has improved a lot its efficiency as public transportation system, and it has reduced a lot the use of machine to communications, the time of transportation of people. Mobile operators are also offering several sets of services to companies, such as this one that we see, that they measure the tanks fullness and how in certain industries this is very important because it has reduced and improved a lot the costs savings. And also car manufacturers are now using machine-to-machine communications in order to facilitate people's communications with their own cars, communications with the car manufacturer, and they provide services for people such as me that sometimes we leave the keys inside the car, so we just make a phone call or send a text message and they just open the car for you. So there are several uses that they are using right now, and there is one that it's not in the slide, but it's very, very useful, and it's recently being used in the coffee industry. The coffee industry is using machine-to-machine communications in order to improve the coffee growing process by letting the coffee growers know what are the levels of coffee that they should be collecting day by day, and that way not depleting all the coffee resources and not wasting coffee in the process. So this is what we are seeing right now. As regulator, we want to enable the Internet of Things in several ways. First, we want to improve trust of people in the use of the Internet of Things. This is because we know that there are a lot of challenges regarding privacy. However, we also want to set as a couple of regulations that make competition in the market much more transparent. And I'm saying this because most of these services that we just saw have been challenged. They are regularly being provided by a third party, not an operator. And operators have, unfortunately, imposed some barriers to third parties who want to provide service in machine-to-machine communications. So we are producing a set of regulations that will prevent margin squeezes from operators that sometimes happen, and they will at some point artificially block the growth of the Internet of Things that we just don't want to destroy. And in addition, we want as well to set a set of regulations that allow larger access to numbering resources. Larger access to numbering resources, not only for operators but for third parties, will definitely improve the Internet of Things, and will definitely make that companies that are not regularly related to the mobile network operation or the network operations will get into this market with new innovations that will foster the welfare of people. So this is based on the regulatory issues that we're handling. Regarding the policies that the government is promoting, there are just two very important projects that the Ministry of Telecommunications in Colombia is doing. The first is the project on big data and big data analytics, that, as we know, machine-to-machine communications produce a lot of data, and but in Colombia we still don't have much data centers that, or data processors that make big data one of these big data analysis, one of the businesses that will enhance the use of machine-to-machine communication. So we are working on that, and we are also working on a set of regulations that will promote the IT industry in the development of applications for the use of this public data and the access to data from the government. So we think, and we want to produce much more talent in this industry that will also allow us as a government to promote the use of the Internet of Things. And based on those policies, what we've seen is that there is, of course, there is a need of not much more regulation, but at least policies that enable it. And this is the data of the last 2.5 years regarding how machine-to-machine communications have changed. And as you see in the green line, it shows that from this first term of 2012 to the last quarter of 2013, we've seen a huge increase in the use of machine-to-machine communications through SMS. And the SMSs for internal operation purposes or contest SMS, as you've seen, and the person-to-person SMS have gone down, but operators are looking at a new source of revenue coming from user-machine and machine-to-machine communications SMSs. So we are in the government very happy that the use of machine-to-machine communications are increasing, but we require to keep with the policies that will allow the Internet of Things to be about people and to improve the welfare of people, and that's why we are developing all these policies in order to gain much more from the development of the Internet of Things and machine-to-machine communication. So that's basically it. Thank you very much to everyone who's here.
Thank you. Thank you. Perfect. Almost to the second. Mr. Contini, great.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. I've been asked to outline the major governance issues related to the successful development of the IoT and to share best practices. What I can share with you is only, of course, only the point of view of a private company coming with a very specific competitive space, dealing with what we have to imagine as a set of disruptive technologies enabling this third platform, how IDC calls the combination of cloud, mobile, big data, and social technologies. A place where 1/3 of the future business will be managed by 2020, mainly. Still, this biased point of view is relevant because IoT will be shaped, and it is shaped right now, mainly by private companies trying to establish a clear leadership in their own space, and by companies trying to leverage these technologies to transform their own specific industries. So, why the business point of view matters? Business leaders worldwide understand that the IoT represents a massively disruptive technology. Cisco alone estimates that the Internet of Everything will generate 14 trillion in economic value or business opportunity over the next 10 years. Apple, Google, Microsoft, and the likes are eager to establish their de facto standards. And to a certain extent, this is inevitable and goes with the consolidation and the material realization of this market opportunity. Still, IoT represents also a great opportunity to facilitate smarter living, helping us to address global and social challenges, making Europe, for example, a more sustainable and inclusive economy. So we need the right directions to stimulate the development of the IoT in a way that best supports Europe's growth and job objectives and contribute to addressing social challenges while ensuring trust and security, including the respect of fundamental rights. Now, the smart city application and services market alone could grow to 3.3 trillion by 2025. So smart cities are retooling their communication infrastructures with the aim of better managing municipal energy, waste, traffic, and so forth. IoT, therefore, represents an opportunity for all of us to develop new jobs and new competencies such as network design, data analysis, data security, and engineering. Now, coming to regulation. Existing regulations have been shaped mainly in order to manage human communication. So are the infrastructures, the telecommunication infrastructure. We only recently have been moving from managing voice traffic to carry videos. IoT is a convergence of cloud, sensors, platforms, networks, data storage, and management, enabling massive and ubiquitous, albeit right now sometimes with low throughput per device, machine-to-machine communications. It's a major change. So we need a regulatory framework designed to support this huge incoming transformation with respect to infrastructures, licenses, rules, procedures. Since the business models that we envisage are different, are way different, so it must be the regulation. Since IoT is going to have a huge impact on transforming non-digital industries, we need to take care of their regulatory frameworks too. For example, let's consider the utility sector and the impact IoT is having on metering and it could have in the development of the smart cities. Now, energy regulators are not TLC regulators. Not very often they talk together to each other. So regulators and policymakers of ICT and energy should cooperate in order to exploit this transformational power of the IoT. There are a few questions that arise and have been raised by the previous speakers. I would like to focus on data, privacy, identity, and standards from the private company point of view. With respect to data, who owns data? Who administers them? Who determines how data standards are set, how data is organized, how it's kept, where it's kept, and who can see it and use it and for what purposes? Then there are the not so subtle issue of who owns the derivative information about the data, like the emergent patterns in data and the implications of those patterns. So basically, that's a very admittedly complex issue, but it's relevant to create or not a market. Privacy. Are we sure that the existing asymmetric set of rules are well designed to address the incoming transformations? How regulations may cope with the changes in consumer behavior, with some customers very willing to renounce privacy, maybe in exchange for an economic or social return or for nothing, while others may be very conservative about their own privacy. To what extent ethical motivations should win against freedom of individuals, and how to protect those less cultured? Identity is the other side of the coin. There are currently several initiatives, many of them in Europe, to give us digital identity as digital citizens. But we are already complex entities, each of us, made of ourselves plus several sensors and actuators exchanging information and doing things in the real world. Now, these sensor actuators will belong to us, not always, basically, as well as the actions that they will perform on our behalf. So, our digital identity must somehow include all these objects, links and relations. And regulations must evolve accordingly, avoiding to maintain the existing geographical distortion and fragmentation. Coming to standard definition. The real Internet of Things, meaning the wide availability and exchange of information among the different devices and sensors, in order to better serve an individual or an entity, private or public, will not happen as soon as we expect, because the lack of standards will prevent adoption on a broader scale. We can't have smart cars, smart cities, and widely connected, well-functioning systems if these parts don't fit together. While there are a few companies that would like to set de facto and worldwide standards, it's simply needed that regional local authorities implement policies granting or at least favoring interoperability among platforms and applications. IoT cannot remain, I think, a collection of different independent verticals, applications, and platforms. In order to unleash its full potential, this solution has to interact and to interoperate in order to make possible the delivering of a new, enhanced user experience, and in order to help companies to increase quality of life of the individuals. We cannot forget that there are major differences in the economic, industrial, and regulatory policies in world different regions. For example, in the US there are sort of 4 major telecommunication operators, more than 100 in Europe. Attitude towards privacy is different in each of the world's region, and in the European Union is different in each state. And this is the case for identity too. The issue of telecommunication against OTT players is well known. These asymmetries will contribute to shape the supply side of the IoT, and the IoT realm is ubiquitous and often implies mobility, and depending on the application may be largely sovereign-national. So how can we ensure a level competing field that will allow private companies to compete on a fair basis? Which are the clear rules that will regulate, and to what extent, the new markets enabled by the IoT? And who will in charge of forging them? Companies invest in infrastructures only if there is a clear and predictable economic return. They need to foresee a relevant market ahead, significant economies of scale, and some sort of sustainable competitive advantage. Particularly in Europe, a possible answer, or at least a direction to aim to look forward to, would be to the realization of a single digital market, at least for the IoT, in order to make a stronger use of the best European asset, a single market stretching over a whole continent with 500 million potential consumers. While the European market offers already a lot of benefits to Europeans, this is not yet true when it comes to digital products and services, and is not going to be true with regards to IoT for what we can see so far. Europe today does not have one, but 28 digital markets, regulated mainly nationally. We continue to have in Europe 28 national telecoms regulators, 28 national privacy authorities, 28 consumer protection laws for the Internet. I think it's a complex environment. So the Internet is global, and the IoT too. Still, Europe believes it can afford fragmented regulation 28 times for digital products and services as well. So I think that what we need is more Europe in telecom regulation, in the application of competition law, and in privacy matters. Only in this way we will be in the condition to face the regulatory asymmetry that helps the existing internet giants and marginalize all other companies. As President Jean-Claude Juncker said, Europe has to be big on big issues in the future. Very, very good. The digital single market is a big issue. It is the key to unlock the door to a European future of innovation, job growth, and competitiveness. IoT, it is really a strong business enabler, but to exploit this opportunity, our private companies, all private companies, must be given a stable, clear, and not fragmented, favorable regulatory framework specifically designed to unleash the IoT full potential. Minus 2 minutes, I'm sorry.
Excellent, excellent. Yes, Professor Lee.
Good morning. I'm going to talk about some policies that have been set up in Korea about the IoT, and also, I'll mention about some enabling technologies about the IoT services that need some standardization and the platform and global collaboration. In order to talk about the government, Korean government, the master plan, I need to talk about some background for building policies on IoT in Korea. I think you have I think some of you have already mentioned the number of devices connected will be maybe 26 billion to many, the companies like IBM, HP, or Cisco. They have the foresees this, kind of the expansion of the number of the devices connected. And the Korea government identified IoT is the key technology and smart service for improving in 3 areas. One is the public administration, and for the improving the industry product, and another is individual quality of improving the quality of life of individual quality of life. So I think I'll show you some the slides that maybe many of you have already seen in many conferences. The U.S. National Academy of Engineering, foresees the grand challenges for the 21st centuries, and that's the sustainability of the resources and sustainability of the environment, and also about health and security or joy of living. Okay, and they identified 14 areas, and another smart services we can find in many areas like smart planning, smart cities, energy and transport, living, health. So the reason the Korean government identify IoT as a key technology is for those the applications. The first thing is to find the signal, the situation of the current status that around us, and then we want to convert that signal into the value and into insight, so that some actions could be performed for the life quality of life, or for the improving the production, the improvements, and the public, the safety and like that. And so we know that in order to have some valuable social service, the IoT is the basic technology and service, and along with that we need some big data and cloud the platforms all together. Okay, so we start with the IoT. So IoT has enough potential as a new growth engine to stand as the global market for the Korea, with this some top-class ICT structures and manufacturing capacities. So we think the IoT provides the virtual digital world with the IoT, big data, and cloud to provide the smart services. And another one is nowadays the Korean government looks for the creative economy of the Korea by promoting more small and medium-sized companies, and we think that IoT technology and IoT service is quite suitable for the small and medium-sized companies. So last May, the Korean government set up some master plan for building the IoT to lead the hyper-connected and digital revolution, and they select the IoT as one of the 4 basic infra technologies. Okay, so that's about some what's going on in Korea about IoT, and for the practices, IoT practices, from 2000, early 2000, we have started about the RFID USN the project. That is about the IT convergence project in many industries. And based on that, in the last year and this year, the government performed another project. We called it a vitamin project. Maybe a vitamin means that we can have some convergence project from the agriculture, which means A, and B and bio, and C is a clean environment, something like that. So in 2013, we led the 15 leading vitamin projects. For the AF4, AFF, and smart farm of fishes, and safe control for drug, and city and Asian museum in my hands, and something like a smart forecast for disease or wellness ICT. So in many areas, from the individual quality of life to the public safety. And next year we are going to perform some projects based on 3 areas. One is a small project, and mid-sized project, and large-sized project. And usually the small project based on the DIY and how to make it some practical services. And Mid-sized projects is like some government, the public administration, like disaster safety and some, in Korea we'll have some 2018 we have a winter the Olympic in Korea, so maybe some in sports area we can apply these IoT applications. And for the large project we can apply some smart agriculture, health, and smart city. Okay, this is one example. I have pictured before I came to here, and in Seoul is a very well organized for the public bus system, public systems. So when you visit Seoul, not to try to rent a car, but try to use the bus or train. You can see many the informations about the public bus information, and it shows some the expected bus arriving time. In the left, the picture shows some bus numbers and how many minutes I have to wait. And in the box of the yellow, they shows what kind of buses will arrive soon. And also in the right side of the picture, then you can see some the weather information too. So it provides the bus information also, and weather and pollution information around me. Okay, so this is the basis on the location sensing and the bus arriving sensing. So bus has the Wi-Fi system and GPS system, and the information goes to the cloud servers, so to provide this kind of information. Okay, and to provide this kind of the IoT services, we need we need some technologies that enables this kind of IoT services. I think in order to have this one, we for the individual things, you have the things should be communicate each other, like M2M communications, or sometimes the things communicate with through the wireless sensor network. And maybe at home we may have some the server through some wireless access network at home, and sometimes through the wireless access and core network we need to access some the applications through some the platforms. So every the elements like things and wireless access, we have so many ISPs and core network and service to reach to the clouds and big data or social network. We need some platforms that place together among the elements of the sensor network or the servers. Okay, so these are the enabling technologies, and the issues among those are for example, the thing or node issues. We need the very small size platform, and as someone already mentioned about naming and addressing, and some how can you get the energy from the outside, the energy harvesting. Those are some key issues to be successful IoT services. And wireless sensor network, we need the auto configuration and the sustainability. And for the access network, can you use the current existing legacy TCP/IP network to provide this kind of services? Maybe we can apply like a software-defined network, to reconfigure and to flexibly configure the network for the IoT service. For example, like disaster services, we may need sometimes we need abrupt, resources for those kind of the disaster services. So we need some dynamic traffic access network, and also we need to have some the platform to connect with the cloud and the social network. Okay, and so and about time is 3 minutes had passed. So and maybe for the frequencies, maybe the spectrums. We can use this kind of unlicensed band and the licensed band for the accessing the things or the wireless sensor network and some core network. So I think those are already, you know, many people, many in the standard groups are talking about this kind of the protocols for the thing-to-thing or D2T the communications. And so the recommendations, as you see in the elements of the IoT enabling services, we need various, you know, kinds of the elements that should be standardized. So we need some standardization, global standardization for the sensor network and the platforms for the cloud or the big data, and we need some industry standard harmonization group of the user convenience. For example, for the smart home network, at our home, we may have various kinds of the smart, you know, the home electronic devices from various companies. Though we have a very, you know, the valuable experience of the home network services on the last maybe 10 or 20 years ago, and at the time, I think we have failed because of we cannot reach to the standard harmonization of the home electronic devices. So we need, especially for the IoT area, we need some industry standard harmonization group for user convenience. And another thing is about the service, mentioning about the service sustainability. We have experience in Korea, starting with the RFID demonstration programs. 10 years ago, we have many projects being performed in many areas. And after 10 years, if we go that places that shows some best practices of the RFID, and some of them are not working anymore because of the, you know, battery failures, or some node failures, or some, you know, sensor failures. So we need some, you know, the service sustainability to provide the trustness to the users of the IoT services. So we need to develop technology for the service of sustainability. And also, IoT service is not a local service. Yesterday, Rudolf and I talked about the order, the vehicle. Maybe I can import some car from the German or France to Korea, and the IoT services in that car should work in our country. So we need a global collaboration, and sometimes from country to country they may have some different privacy rules. So for the IoT services, so we think we need to think about that. Okay, that's all. Sorry for spending too much time.
No, that's excellent. We're still within the projected time that we had when we started planning for this, so I'm really thankful to all the speakers for staying so nicely on time, so that we even had time to expand. I think this has been a fascinating discussion so far. The only one left is Kairon from Malaysia, who just won a Seed Alliance award here, and I think has been doing some excellent work in Malaysia. So we go on now to
Okay. Good morning, everybody. I'm happy that everybody else here hasn't picked up coffee as well, because I'm going to grab it from you. Okay, my background is actually, I'm really happy to hear my fellow panelists actually cover a lot of the points as regulators and standards bodies, that you've actually addressed a lot of the needs of what we, or in this sense, the consumers are building. So in my case, I need to build civic applications that the public wants, or to be able to make the data available that, you know, either the private sector, government sector, or even just civil society like me can build applications on. And it seems that the fellow panelists have actually addressed most of these points, which is good.
Could you speak better into the microphone?
Okay. All right. So usually, for me, when it comes to the Internet of Things, I usually separate them into two types of devices. One, they're consumer devices or consumers of data. And this is the most prevalent use right now. When I'm talking about consumers of data, it means, like, for example, your mobile phone. When you want to have maps, it's consuming data to show where you are. Weather, for example, so it's a consumer device. It's grabbing data from somewhere to be able to show what the weather is. And it's also, on the other side of the Internet of Things, is also devices which are providing data. These are sensors, devices that provide data, such as sensors. So usually when we work in data, on the big data side, a lot of the fellow panelists have actually showed, for example, like traffic systems. Those are the kinds of data that we need in order to build applications. For example, geolocation data, traffic, and even crime statistics. I'll give a good example for when large data such as crime not being available can hinder innovation. Recently in Malaysia, we had a startup that did really well in terms of having a it's called Werribee, and they actually have a wearable device that quickly sends an alert out through mobile devices to report immediately to the police and emergency services that somebody's in trouble. So one of the things that they don't have is that they don't have statistics on crime. And one of the things that we saw in the US was that with the crime statistics, certain cities are actually able to map out, for example, which areas are safe and unsafe and at specific times. So instead of just being a device, for example, that only warns you after you've already been in trouble, if you actually have large data, for example, like crime data, you could actually be warned ahead that at this specific time, you're in an area downtown late at night when there's no more office workers and the crime rate has gone up. So those are the kind of examples where big data can help do things in ways that you cannot imagine. But quite often in our projects, the problems that we actually face is actually small data. And what I mean by small data is that specific small amounts, like maybe 10,000, 20,000 records, or even standards, that you need to have to be able to build applications that are not actually available to you. And I think for a lot of government agencies, identifying these stumbling blocks are actually a good thing to do, so that because they're easy. It could be some specific, for example, if you want to build an Internet of Things to measure electricity, the standards on how to read the meters, for example. In Malaysia, they've implemented digital meters. What's the standard to read that? If you cannot access that standard, it'll be difficult to build your device. So those are the kind of data that is needed, but you don't have, and you can't do it, and you can't build these things. The other ones that are also low-hanging fruit are things like administrative data. For example, we were trying to build applications to fix local council issues. And actually the biggest problems that we had was actually data on jurisdiction. So if you have a road, one side of the road might be from one local council, and the other side of the road could be another local council. So if you don't have this simple data, you'd have all these problems mapped out, but there's no way to actually build an application to report the problems to the specific administrative body. So these are kind of small data that we can't have. On the other side, in terms of provider devices, these are actually quite simple. Several examples have already been given. For example, the good thing about now is that with the Internet of Things, most of these devices are basically small computers. They're easy to program. You're using standard internet protocols, and they're down to probably about $20 to $50 now for a full board. where you don't even need specific embedded knowledge, embedded computing knowledge to program these things. Some examples of this being done that could be done, for example, in terms of government. We had water shortages in Malaysia, but the reservoir readings were done once a week, often too late to warn the public about when their levels are being low. A simple device like this, to actually share data on reservoir levels could be used by a lot of different, could be used by local councils and local governments to plan ahead. Recently, we had a request, I think, from a Google policy representative saying that how do we build, for example, disaster or flood management? Again, these are simple, they're not costly devices. All you need to do is, especially in Southeast Asia, where the internet is being applied really rapidly, so we don't have issues of rural, not too big issues of rural areas without internet access. So basic little devices that can measure, for example, the water levels of rivers are things that are easily implemented by government if they provide it in on the internet as standard data. There'll be lots of different applications in terms of planning for disaster management. Okay, so having said that, here are the problems that we face in terms of recommendations. When we approach government agencies in terms of these ideas and opening it up, a lot of government agencies are happy. They want to do it because that's their job, to serve the people. But often in developing countries like Malaysia, we don't have policies and guidelines for these agencies to follow. So it's really important that the key agencies that are the regulators and policymakers for other government agencies have these guidelines so that the other agencies can implement best practices really easily. So it's not about unwillingness, but not being able to have guidelines to easily implement it. The other problem that that was also raised recently is fragmentation and competition. In this new space, a lot of different players, both private sector, public sector, even sometimes competing agencies within public sector, are all trying to build, all acquiring data and not sharing the data. So a good example for this is that for about 3 years in Malaysia, Google actually was ready to have navigation, like turn-by-turn navigation, but couldn't do it because of the labyrinth of legal problems of the data on all the street maps. There's probably 6 to 7 players, if I recall, each having different portions of the country. So you'd have to negotiate with like 6 different providers to be able to build one application. So I think this is a balancing act that regulators have to do between competition, in which you want to ensure competition that people will try to get and acquire data or data sources, while at the same time try to avoid a field where you have fragmentation and it actually reduces innovation because people are not able to do it without a legal labyrinth. And finally, this is more from a development agencies. A lot of my final point is that for a lot of developing countries, they try to rush into things when something like Internet of Things comes up and says, look, we're going to need training programs now so that we can build human capacity. I've been in this area for over 8 years, and I hope that these mistakes are not repeated again. That instead of focusing on specific, for example, training programs by specific vendors, that educational institutions should continue to provide, education on the basics. You should be able to program in any embedded devices rather than vendor neutral, because in this rush in the Internet of Things, specific vendors will come in with their specific solutions and say, do this training. And so it's important to ensure that on the education side that things stay open just as they are in the rest of the Internet of Things space. Thank you.
Thank you. This has been absolutely great. I've been tweeting quite a bit of what's being said here, and we're also getting some questions via Twitter. So, now, one of the messages that we're getting here is that, well, the Internet of Things is not really new anymore. It is there already, and we are seeing, whether it's developing countries or developed countries, we are seeing everything being rolled out. Some of the main themes that I hear with regards to government policy is mostly about removing the roadblocks. It's not that there are specific things that the government should regulate before it can happen. No, it's much more about removing the roadblocks that are there. Incompatible privacy regulations is a problem for Europe. Access to government data where there isn't a regulation that makes this possible in Malaysia is a good example. Numbering policy that Colombia mentioned. Are there any regulations you think are necessary that governments would need to impose on those who offer Internet of Things applications? For example, in the area of security, should we make some requirements on companies to have a particular standard of security, especially when devices are in the field for 15 or 30 years, 15 to 30 years. Speakers, what do you say? Jari, maybe?
So I think several of us brought up the question of standards, and I think governments and regulation may have a role there in terms of advocating that, as an example, everything that governments or the public sector acquires in terms of for its own use, that's actually built in a way that enables them to share data and to modularly change parts when needed. I think that's one key area where probably some new work is useful.
Any other comments? Were there any questions from the remote participation, Lorraine? No. Okay. It seems that Europe hasn't woken up yet, and Asia may just be doing something else. But we did have a question from Mike Nelson via Twitter that I will look up now. Mike was here in the room, but probably needed to go somewhere else and did want to get heard, so Twitter is great for that. He says, my question on IoT, the policy panel, what can we learn from the slow growth and fragmentation of the home networking market from 1990 until now? And in addition, do we have the unlicensed spectrum we need for global Internet of Things applications? Who can I give the floor on that? Professor Lee, maybe?
First question was about the home network. What could you say again, please? What
can we learn from the difficulties with home networking?
I think I already mentioned on that in my presentation. We have experience of the somewhat failure in automating our home or providing these smart services for the home network. And for example, in Korea, two big companies like Samsung or LG, and they have their own, the platforms for the smart home network. But as for me, I have in my home, I'm not the only one, the company user. I have many the devices, electronic devices. But so when some company use some like access some smart, the box to connect all the the home electronics. That kind of the platform or standard should be collaborated with others, so that the users provided with for the common these services. So I mentioned as a recommendation. So we need some like some associations for the industries for home network to provide the successful smart home services, not the old days of the experiencing the old days of the home network service. Okay. Okay. And another question was about the do we need some unlicensed the spectrum for the IoT services? I think we may need some more unlicensed spectrum for the uses of the IoT services rather than licensed spectrums, because the many applications use the like at home or some in the buildings. We use some the unlicensed the spectrums. So we may need some unlicensed the spectrums in IoT service, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch a little bit on this unlicensed spectrum issue as well. I think competition in general is good, and it's better when we have multiple different types of technologies available, unlicensed and licensed, and competing approaches. I think one observation that I would make from the last 10 years or so is that we've had some number of attempts to do very IoT-specific technologies. And my sense of it at least has been that they've struggled a little bit in taking off, whereas now what seems to be happening is that those people who have learned how to build, say, wireless LAN or cellular systems that reach the right power levels and can be built in the right way for the Internet of Things market, and then this general purpose network is so attractive because, why would I buy anything else than a wireless LAN based thing for my home, because I already have a wireless LAN access point, whereas if I needed to buy something else, I'd have to get the new infrastructure there. So there's a lot of interest in using existing things and existing technologies, unlicensed or licensed.
Yeah, and if the other speakers want to respond to this? I see we have questions from the room. The lady in the back with the microphone.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I have to. Yes, I have a question. Is it on, the microphone? No. No. I think it's on, yeah. Okay, this is Rita from Open Data Hong Kong. I would like to make a general comment about the IoT discussion. I think at the moment it is really completely dominated by engineering and ICT companies. And so there is such a striking lack of really good ideas for applications. And I think that is because of the lack of user or citizen involvement from the early stage. Kari mentioned a few examples, but I want to see more of the telco companies and the utility companies to join up with citizens to ask them whether they want these services and how they want these services, and also have a broad discussion on data ownership from a very early beginning. Because what are the options? Are there any options if I don't want the smart services? And I have actually not really seen a really smart service. And these constant examples on, having some kind of automated messages when your fridge is empty are really quite boring and not really that striking. So I haven't seen really smart examples of really good IoT ideas. And I think that's because of the lack of involvement of citizens. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm Satish from India, and I have a comment on the need for regulations of a slightly different kind. We see that IoT, we're going to have devices all over the place. We're going to have devices that we wear, and possibly inside our bodies as well. Now, the privacy and data is one aspect of what comes out of these devices. But I come from the open source background, and I also see the need for these devices which are either not very well known to us, or it's in places that we cannot access easily inside our bodies as well. Are we aware of, because this is a hardware and software combination, it is not just software, and it's not very easy to look into as well. So what are the safeguards and precautions that one can have when we use this software, especially when you're talking about the latter 3 billion people who are not tech savvy, who will end up actually using some of these things as well. So just a comment that we may need additional safeguards, not just for data emanating from these devices, but also the software inside these devices. Thank you.
Thank you. Who in the panel wants to go into these 2 points?
I would like to address the latter question. Now, IoT is somehow different, I think, from previous technology breakthrough, because it has a very huge impact on other industries. Many of you may have read that engineers from car manufacturers do not know anything about the 200 devices, computers that are in every car, so they are not at all able to manage the issue, the security issue that may arise by misuse or cyber attacks to these cars. So the point that I would like to make is that we badly need to support the knowledge transfer to companies coming from other business, trying to transform their own business, leveraging on digital innovation. It is true that now, currently, IoT is mainly driven by ICT companies. This is way bad. And it's not true that in the future we will see only a B2C business model. We are going to see, from the ICT point of view, a B2B2C model. So we have to take into the equation companies coming from non-digital industries, that they are maybe a strong enabler, or maybe a strong provider of bad news to all of us as consumers.
Yeah, this is just to address that issue about citizen involvement. I think it's from having talked to a lot of the private sector as well as people trying to build the applications. One of the things that about the Internet of Things is actually reducing the accessibility, reducing the barriers to development, because it's extremely most people who can program for the Internet now can actually start working on devices, and it's actually better for the device makers to make, like as it was explained, if you have a wireless device, to make the best wireless device, and then for the people to build these applications, well, it's not that difficult then to just build the applications on top using standard internet protocols. So the barrier here is not so much, I see as in terms of engagement from industry to people. I would say that the barriers which has been raised are things like regulations, standards, and so on, that are blocking these people from innovating in this space. So that's my answer. Thank you.
Pablo?
So just to kind of reply to the 2 questions that were raised, first regarding how other participants in the market can use or better use these technologies in order to produce more innovations that are helpful for increasing consumer welfare. First, well, what we're doing with regulation is to make that the playing field for everyone in the market is the same. And that will definitely drive innovation in different ways that we have not seen before. And the fact that other companies or other manufacturers of different kind of services in different markets than the markets of telecommunications are involved in these technologies and have no barriers to entry to the market will definitely improve the use of machine-to-machine communications and the Internet of Things in order to increase the consumer welfare. And in developing countries, I think and in every country basically, the quantity of possibilities is just incredible to increase the welfare of people. And in second point, and I think it's regarding the problem of privacy and the use of certain devices and certain applications in order to allow people to get certain information that will be good for example, their health. Yes, there are a lot of privacy concerns, and I think regulators, what regulators have to do is to start to promote a lot of transparency with consumers regarding who owns the information, what is the purpose the information is being used, and what are the limits of the use of that information. As long as consumers have or are being given the information that is right regarding what is the uses of this information, basically, and the rights that they have with this information, which is basically the most important, the trust in the use of devices such as wearables or any other device that or any other application that enables the Internet of Things, that would again construct the trust that we need in order to make this market much more transparent.
Thank you. We will take another 3 questions. First from the gentleman there, then Martin, and then the lady.
Robert Pepper at Cisco. So three quick points. First, on regulation, Ofcom, some regulators have opened up proceedings to look at Internet of Things and asking, what do we need to regulate? Ofcom has opened up a consultation that takes the opposite. In fact, they've entitled their proceeding, Promoting Investment and Innovation in the Internet of Things. Right? So they are taking a glass half full approach and are not assuming that there needs to be more regulation, right? But they're asking questions about what is the regulatory framework. And so I would urge everybody to take a look at the Ofcom consultation because it's a very interesting approach. Second, standards. Yari, is the chair of the IETF, and I don't know, so a lot of these issues, and there's an assumption, right, that this is only ICT driven, right? Not true. Yep. In fact, at the IETF meeting in Toronto several weeks ago, there were people from BMW, Siemens, Ford Motor, other large industrial companies that are there because they are working within the IETF on these types of standards. So I would frankly urge, right, an ad for the IETF that frankly this is I think the place to be looking at. It doesn't have to be a single standard. We're talking about interoperability, right? And we're talking about if there are questions about security, there are work groups looking at security. So I think that the IETF has proven over the years much more effective than the traditional standards bodies at coming up with standards in the Internet Protocol world, right? Remember, ISDN took 17 years, and then when they finished the standard, nobody wanted it, and they still said ISDN stood for I still don't know, right? That is not a very effective approach, right? So again, an ad, Yari, for the great work that you and the IETF does. Third, devices, and devices and spectrum. What we are seeing as the world of machine-to-machine and Internet of Things and ultimately the Internet of Everything, once you do the analytics, grows, we're seeing a very wide, diverse, heterogeneous group of devices. Some of those devices will have no compute power, right? Others will have a lot of compute power. Some are going to have to communicate over very short distances, like the Proteus pill that you swallow that does one thing and one thing only. And this actually is a very concrete example of consumer benefit, which is one of the problems that older people have is they forget to take their medications. And this actually results in having to go to hospital, right? All the Proteus pill does is say, hello, I'm here, when you digest it. And it talks to a patch that you attach to your stomach, and then that talks to your smartphone or your Wi-Fi router or whatever, right? As a result of that, if it doesn't call home, right, your health provider, whether it's a nurse, doctor, or your granddaughter, can say, Grandma, did you take your pill? This is saving lives at very, very low cost and avoiding very high-cost trips to the emergency room. But that pill only has to communicate over several inches. Right? On the other hand, if you're looking at traffic monitoring, it may have to communicate, and that's very narrowband. It's bursty, very bursty. It chirps. There are going to be other devices that are going to be broadband and continuous over long distances. So we have a very heterogeneous group of devices. Some are going to be short distance, some long distance in terms of communicating. Some are going to be broadband communication, some are narrowband. Some are going to be bursty, some are going to be continuous. And therefore, we need a heterogeneous basket of spectrum to meet the specific needs of this heterogeneous collection of diverse devices. One size won't fit all, right? And this is where, Yari, as you point out, unlicensed, especially over the short distances, actually is very, very effective. And so I think we need to think about it in a different way, and that's where I would, again, urge people to look at the Ofcom consultation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Rudolf. Like Vince Cerf reminded us yesterday, internet is not one thing, it's a net of networks. And Internet of Things is not different. It's part of that. It's just a reminder to us how things are changing. And I think from that perspective, there's a very good place here at the Internet Governance Forum to be discussed on global level as well, with multiple stakeholders. This network is not going to happen by one stakeholder alone. This needs cooperation. So with all that, the realization is we want two things. One is to get all the benefits that it promises, that we need in this world to stay sustainable a little bit longer. At the same time, we don't want to end up in a world that is really watching us, Kafka-like, limiting us in our freedoms. And how much we like and are willing to accept in a global setting is not what I can think of as a Dutchman. It's not what you can think of as a Chinese or as an American. We need to create some space in which we together can benefit from this without ending in this dead alley. So one of the mechanisms the Internet Governance Forum has is the Dynamic Coalition for this. We'll meet at room I-1, room 1, or workshop room 3 or 1 or whatever, the first room when you get down. Intent is to come together with some ideas of what actions should be taken on global governance level, and you're very much invited for that. Very much appreciate your introductions. What many of us will have, we've heard many of these things before, but let's get it clear and let's make sure that we can move forward with this.
And the lady there, and then we do a reaction from the panel.
Okay, thank you so much. This is a great panel. This is Burcu Bakyoglu from IRP. I want to go back to the security question because I don't think it was really answered at all, and the fact that only one person boldly tried to answer it tells me that it hasn't been really, maybe it's been talked about but not really addressed. And the reason why I'm saying is that it also would like to know a little bit more about what's being done about this, because when hackers are hacking, IoT is the easiest thing to hack. I do not wear anything except my cell phone, which is also a security risk, but because of that. Thank you.
So we're getting close to the end, so I would like to ask all panelists to give a reaction to the last three, and then I'm sorry we're up for time. So please, Pablo, I saw you angling for, so you've.
Okay, thank you very much. The last couple of questions were very, very interesting, and the first one to Mr. Pepper. So when we speak about regulation, basically it's not necessarily to impose more regulations, but to remove regulations. And what we see in the Internet of Things and machine-to-machine communications is the opposite: is that there is too many regulations that give a leverage to operators in order to margin squeeze, and to do all sorts of practices that do not allow other market participants to get into this and to develop new innovative applications for the Internet of Things. So basically what we're doing in Colombia is basically the opposite. We're trying to remove regulations in order to open more the market the participation in the market, and one of those includes the allowance of numbering to third parties, not just to operators. So, so that means that you don't need a license as an operator in order to start using, for example, SIM cards in certain devices that you want to provide to the market. But those are consultations that we're just starting to proceed with. And regarding the issue of security, of course, there is a lot of risks on everything that requires internet and the data, and the transfer of data and personal data. I don't know if you know the example of the first device that was used for the heart was that was connected to Bluetooth, if I'm not wrong, was Dick Cheney's. And I think they removed the Bluetooth because, of course, there was a risk. But every single technology has a risk, and not only the ICTs. And the development of securities and cybersecurity, it's improving so much, and the OECD has done a very interesting job in determining several recommendations regarding cybersecurity that I think is not an issue that regulators, governments, and even private parties have just not raised. Is that it's running next to the use of telecommunications, and the issue of privacy as well is very important. I'm a very sophisticated user, and I'm connected to everything. I have this, I have this, I have like several phones. My cell phone sends a text message to my wife every single time that I arrive home, telling her I'm home. So that's very useful, just in case. And it depends. Oh yeah, this is Colombia as well, so that's important. But there are a lot of very good uses to technology. So it's not a matter of being afraid of the use of the data and who's using the data. It's just a matter of knowing what rights do I have over my data. And of course, there are risks, as in every single technology that you use. But sometimes the benefits are way over the costs of and the risks of using ICTs.
Panelists who want to make a statement, we are on time now, so keep it short, but we would like to get your opinions in, please.
This is really going to be short on security. Is it on? That's it. Yeah. Okay. I'll be short on security because security is just so huge. I mean, if you go on to the macro scale, you're going to go through surveillance, and if you go on the micro scale, it's like the Bluetooth on the pacer. So it's more of a question rather than a statement, because as been shared, there's a lot of security groups. Those analyzing independently devices, those independently monitoring what kind of information coming out from internet devices. So more of a question here is then there's a demand for it and there's people doing this, but how do we ensure that these security security research enough of it is being done? And I don't know the answer to the supply and demand side of this need.
So I also wanted to address the security question, and it's really, really important. And let me just say that all of us take it very, very seriously, and are working hard on that around the industry and standards organizations and policy organizations. But there's really no one security for IoT, just like there's no one security solution or problem for the internet. It's actually multiple different problems. If you think about, say, some public service facility that produces information like what the weather is like around the country or where are the traffic jams, there you're very interested in availability and no one can tamper with the information or prevent access to it. If you have something else where you say control the traffic. I read this research last week about security in traffic lights, and it was very depressing reading, like default passwords all over the place, and just days where you send the information. I don't like this provider in that other country anymore. I want to switch to something else or my own server. Or I mean that's very important. A third class of things is, or fourth actually, is tracking. That there's at the technical level, there are some identifiers at the lower parts of the stack that can be used to identify you. I mean, you walk around with your whatever things you have, and those identifiers may be used to track you, and that's a bad thing. And some technologies don't have that issue, and the rest are working on resolving it. So there's many different questions, and those are all being worked on. But it's a really hard problem too.
Okay, mentioning about the security, I think how can we implement some security, the technology for the IoT services is sometimes, as someone mentioned, the thing should be very dummy one. Then how can we do you want the security, some technology to that dummy things? So I think for the security issues, we need to attack in many the levels from the device to the services. So I think the total solution for that is about the IoT service management system. Think about the current mobile the ISPs. They provide every ISPs have their network center that handles the sustainability of the service, and also some the security of their services, and also their devices and their base stations like that. So I think in order to provide the IoT services should be sustainable and reliable and to be trusted. I think for example at home we may need the home management system that handles the security and also the sustainability at the same time. For example, let's assume that to save the energy in this room, maybe we set up some sensors here, but sometimes the sensors may be out of battery or sometimes out of the order. Then how can we trust this service if some sensors are out of order? Then who will change their sensors? So I think we need the management system for the reliable, the secure services for the IoT services. So that's the one thing that we can attack for the secure services. Yeah.
Being an ISP, I can tell you that the security issue is not going to be solved once and for all. It will be a long journey that goes along with the commercial development of IoT solutions. So what I expect is that both the security actions and the learning curve of the on the supply side will develop along with the commercial success and the evolution, or the market evolution, of the different IoT solutions. So the the pace of development or commercial development of IoT solution will be strictly correlated with the development of security and trust, building of trust among these solutions.
Yes, thank you. That brings us to the end of this session. I want to thank our co-organizers of this session, the Korean government, the Colombian telecom regulator, and Telecom Italia, who have helped organize this and bring the speakers together and come up with a great program. I want to thank you all for your participation and your attendance. I want to thank the speakers for their great insights. And just as a last small promotion, the OECD is holding an open forum this afternoon on internet governance and the economic policies that are necessary for that. So you're all very much invited to come to our open forum. And in general, keep in touch with us, because in the coming half year we will be publishing a lot on Internet of Things. Thank you.